Leo, the ordeal is here, and you might be feeling a little bit defensive. We've got the Seven of Spears here, or Seven of Wands. This is the Game of Thrones tarot. And I've said before that this is my Psalm 46:10, Be Still and Know That I Am God card. But Grey Worm here, not terribly still, but that's kind of the idea of surrender in this context to the ordeal, that you know you're coming up against something difficult and you're just going to charge headlong in. Here we go. So let's start getting some cards out and see how we do here. So, Seven of Spears. And that defensiveness, that's the complex that I wanted to talk about, because we're coming from the approach into the ordeal. So from perfectionism into defensiveness for the things that we need to address at this part in the hero's journey. King of Cups, Master of Emotions, and Upright. So mastering those more difficult emotions around defensiveness, because when you get defensive, that's a map to a trigger many times. That can kind of reveal some wounds that might still be open and things that, you know, maybe you just haven't got to that part on your healing journey yet. But in the ordeal, this is what brings you, the hero, whomever, to their lowest point. This is the basement of rock bottom. And that map through defensiveness could be used against you. So we'll see as we get more. But the King of Cups, being a master of emotions, might know. Yeah, the Sun. You know what those triggers are. You've already shone a light on those. It doesn't mean they don't still hurt, though. Like, if you've ever had a really bad injury or something, it takes a really long time to heal. Like, even if it's not open anymore, the scar is still forming, if you poke it, it could still be sore. We've got the Two of Swords behind that, too. This is Arya with her training sword and needle, a real sword. So making a decision, what's going to be the method here as we get further into just the grind of the ordeal? Because the example that I was recalling, and again, I don't like the connotations of this, but I know the story well. It's Harry Potter and the Order of the Phoenix. I think it's the fifth one. In the beginning of the book movie, Sirius Black ends up passing away, you know, Harry's last surviving family member. So the mentor has passed away. And later on, there's a return of a mentor. It's Dumbledore during that fight with Voldemort, but we get to a point with Harry that it seems like he's not going to make it. You know, caught up in that, what was it, that tornado of glass or sand. So it looks like things are pretty grim there, but kind of at the last second, Dumbledore comes in and engages Voldemort. And so that's the ordeal, where he gets brought down, you know, by the loss of his uncle. And then that battle happens after that. And we've got concentration, Saturn in Gemini. We got this in the last reading too. Talking about the Seven of Swords here and unable to keep up with a web of lies. I don't feel like this is you, though. That's just not the vibe I'm getting. It could also be a lot of factors to pay attention to in the ordeal, because that's really hard to get up from. If anybody has ever hit rock bottom and then again and again, and you know, you keep getting backed up and then kicked down the stairs, whatnot, you know just what a delicate balancing act it is when you're in that vulnerable state of having to pick yourself back up, especially after looking at deep wounding, you know, figuring out what, like, why am I like this? Why am I the way that I am? And looking at those, you know, introspective pathways. Concentration. Might need a lot of concentration to get through the ordeal. I'll take the bottom one. Choice in reverse. Mars in Libra. Oh, and the Seven of Spears. That's Mars in Leo. So Mars in Libra in reverse. You know what this is giving me? In order for something to be a choice, there must be more than one viable option. You know, there's so many situations in life that you end up having to go down a path just because there is no other choice. So that might be part of this ordeal that you might find yourself embroiled in. And with the Two of Swords, you could be put into a position, you know, we'll get more context here, but where your sword is chosen for you, whether it's a training sword or the real thing. Because it might just be unwise to pick one over the other. You know, like you don't want to bring a bazooka to a toothpick fight. I think that's Patrick Tian. I used to say Tehan, but it's like Tian. He says that. Enthusiasm. Sun in Sagittarius. Yeah, don't want to get too overly excited with the ordeal. Like, this is a calculated approach, you know, from the approach to the ordeal. So, what is this not choice? Or there's only one true option. Ooh, 10 of Spears reversed. And 4 of Swords reversed. Oh, man. So this is like being pushed to the brink by your circumstances. No rest, no rest. Like, this is the least restful combination that you could really come up with. Because the 10 of Spears, 10 of Wands in reverse, that's like the never-ending burden. And then 4 of Swords, like in the upright, that is rest. And this is, it looks like someone who's passed on. And so in reverse, it kind of, what word am I looking for? It's like you can't get passed on, or like to the next stage, as if you were trapped in a liminal space. It just, like that song that you sang on the schoolyard, the song that never ends, it just like over and over and over. But what is the context of said burden? Huh. Because outside of my association to Psalm 46:10, this is like holding your position after a victory, because the Six of Wands is what's prior to that. You know, the, like, looks like a jouster with a wreath. You know, they're parading through the town, and then immediately people are trying to like knock them off their proverbial high horse, as it were. And it doesn't matter how earned the victory is. People be peopling. They're, rather than doing their own thing, if they're mad that you won and they didn't, like, rather than improving, they might just try to come after you. Metaphorically, hopefully. 10 of coins in reverse. A lot of heavy energy here in this choice. So it's not achieving whatever the ultimate material happiness is. And that, the first association usually is finances, but that could also be health. Material as in the body. So you might have been pushed into the ordeal because your material needs aren't being met. Need a little bit more. Just want one more. Why aren't they being met? Well, got two. Okay. So the Hanged Man, and this is like the Bolton banner, and the Nine of Swords reversed. This is the most positive card. Huh. Because this, in the upright, this is like nightmares, PTSD, and so forth. Reversed, that's the relief of those. Or even being able to get to the root of those triggers. That defensiveness. You know, like some people, they'll take what they know about you and just use it to stab you in the back. Like, act like they're your friend, like having some sort of secret competition that you don't even know you're participating in. It's just like some, I don't know, like jealousy games, like we were talking about holding the position after victory. And it might be this new perspective. You might be seeing your situation for what it really is. That your needs are not getting met, and they're not going to get met. But in this stage of the hero's journey, you are now in the innermost cave. So you're going to have to find a way back out. You know, after this conflict or what have you has brought you to your lowest low. And a perspective change might not be the solution, but it can help get you on the path. Like, it makes me think of when you finally see behind the mask someone, their true colors, and you believe them. That is a relief of this nightmare that's being created, but it's still hard to find out that someone isn't who you thought they were. But grief can be a relief in a way. We've got resistance in reverse. Mercury in Taurus. I think Mercury is in the microwave now. In Sagittarius, I think. So not resisting this change. It's almost like a trust fall into the innermost sanctum. But you know you're in for some sort of like hellish ordeal, unfortunately. Bluff in reverse. Jupiter in Gemini. So, not bluffing. Like, you've had it with this situation, and that's why you're undertaking this ordeal. Because I don't know. When you're at some of your lowest points, that's when your fire burns the hottest. And you can really affect massive change in your life. When you really get fed up with just I have tried and I have tried and I keep like getting kicked back down the stairs and I've had it. And indecision, Venus in Libra, another Libra card, but in reverse. So being very decisive, maybe decisive about the course of action. It's interesting with the Two of Swords. So picking from what I'm getting here, needle. You're picking the real thing. We're not picking up the training sword for the ordeal. So we've made our choice that we are not messing around anymore. Now, what does that mean over here on the right? What are the implications of that not choice? Because, I mean, the alternative would be to stay in the Ten of Spears, the Ten of Coins, and the Four of Swords reversed. And it can feel really... it's just like despair, a real deep sense of despair when you have tried and you have tried and you have tried to resolve a situation. You've made very reasonable requests, expectations, and it's like banging your head up against a wall. And there's only so much you can do before you gotta, like, juggernaut through that wall, And that could be the, that transition from the approach actually into the inner sanctum. And this is the Knight of Cups. A message of emotion. I need a little bit more, because that's usually like a love offer that doesn't really feel right for this. Need a little more. Is this... Getting kind of like a ruse vibe from this. Because there's, you know, the trials and the tribulations in the approach. And there's still going to be a lot of different events and things happening in the ordeal. You have 2 of coins in reverse. So out of balance. And this is the Lannister banner. A Lannister always pays his debts, but it's in reverse. So someone who can't cash the check their mouth is writing. But still, they think themselves like a knight in shining armor. Huh. So out of balance. I mean, this could be like a marriage or something. Like maybe there were expectations that were imposed on you of like excess domestic duties, expectation to mold yourself to your spouse, you know, especially dealing with like narcissistic personalities. There is not a delineation between you and them. That's something that it took me a long time to wrap my mind around, being raised in a household like that, of trying to look through a lens of me not actually being a separate human from my caretaker, which made some behaviors start to make sense, but it's still like it really stretches the mind having to get in those shoes. So this Knight of Cups might think this is perfectly okay to just impose whatever is being imposed on you. You know, that change in perspective, it could be just you seeing this for what it is. That they want to be a knight in shining armor, like they want to be perceived that way. But in reality, what they're offering is like outdated thinking and like a distorted version of chivalry or whatever code that people go by. Ten of Swords. Wow, a lot of tens. So closing of a cycle. And this is actually Jon Snow's lowest point. That would have been the ordeal, or as part of it, a big event around the ordeal in Game of Thrones for him, because he needed a literal resurrection. So is that what this Knight of Cups is offering? Just a Ten of Swords? The rock bottom? Oh, these two tens were in reverse and this one's upright. So this they might be trying to keep you in this cycle. Need one more. Whoever this Knight of Cups is for you, they might be trying to like do the future faking stuff, the oh no, I promise I'll change this time. Like, disregard the dozen times that you brought this up and I blew you off and I never actually did anything to change even though I said I would, but this time's gonna be different. No, it's not. Like, I hate to break it to you, but if you've had this conversation multiple times with them and they're not displaying any kind of change or being open about why they can't change, you know, opening the dialogue a bit, what kind of relationship do you want in your life? Like, what kind of life do you want to have? You know, I hear these stories about, like, say someone who got cheated on, it's justice in reverse, but someone who got cheated on, and then I think transparency is a like something that's worked on after infidelity. I have a zero tolerance policy for infidelity because, like, you knew what was agreed upon, like, you knew the parameters of the relationship and you went outside of that. You either just flat out made that decision or imbibed too much or were trying to, you know, show off in front of your friends or something, like, whatever. Cheating on someone doesn't happen by accident. You know, they might have some sort of triggers or something that they need to work through. But some of the things in there, like getting access to someone's phone, I don't like that. But it really is like policing the behavior of a grown adult, and that just sounds absolutely exhausting. Like, you really cannot convince me to babysit a grown adult in order to make a relationship work. Like, you made your choice. Now don't lie in my bed. Yeah, you can, kitten. Yeah, you already had your chicken. I just couldn't do it. Let's see. A justice in reverse. So maybe they do know what they're doing is wrong, and maybe there's like a compulsion or something. You know, I certainly can't diagnose anybody. But, okay, drama. Yeah. Mercury and Leo. Maybe they just live for the drama. Maybe they're a drama queen. And for lack of a better term, they get off on it. You know, some people are like that. That there's something really disruptive to them about peace. So then they go around destroying other people's peace to make them feel better about themselves, which is so low. And again, like, what do you want the interpersonal relationships in your life to look like? Because that could feed into that complex of defensiveness, you know? Like, they're treating you in ways to create triggers, to create pathways to just reactivity. And then they might press those buttons later because they're the ones that's putting them there, you know? So people can be so cruel. What, kitten? What, my precious? What do you want? What do you want? Why does this person want drama? What's this drama about? Is it just them? Their stuff? It's gone quiet. Okay, got two more. Order. Moon and Virgo in reverse. And Innovation. Jupiter and Aquarius in reverse. Another Jupiter card. So a few repeats here. So Disorder. Just a little chaos monkey. You like live for the drama. Which, oh, exhausting. It just sounds exhausting. Like, deal with your problems. Which, not my responsibility to take that on or be somebody's therapist. And Innovation, that's like just going around the same cycle over and over and over again. You know, and consider the definition of insanity, like doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. And you can't control what another person does. If they want to keep on the merry-go-round, that's their prerogative. You are going to be the one that has to make the difficult decision that if you've tried to work something out with someone, something that's negatively impacting your material and emotional life, that, I'm trying to think of the phrase I heard. It was like, if there are two idiots arguing and you don't step away from the argument, or no, it's like if you're arguing with an idiot and you don't step away from the argument, there are two idiots. There we go. Something like that. Had to fish around in the library for that. What? Get in. Are you not getting enough attention? How's that even possible, huh? So somebody's a little chaos monkey. I don't know what their deal is. I mean, you know, we are talking about the hero's journey here, so they're the antagonist in your story, but if someone all of a sudden that you've been having problems with comes out of the blue with a love offer or some sort of, like, it doesn't have to be romantic love, it could just be affection, like, I feel so bad and blah blah blah, like I didn't feel bad before, but now that I'm experiencing the consequences of my actions in addition to you, yeah, now I'm sorry so that this can stop happening, and then as soon as it stops happening, I'm gonna move on with my life. It's that sort of thing. So what advice do we have here? My precious pumpkin, please wait. How about some advice? So how do we get from the ordeal, from this cycle that doesn't seem to want to end, into the reward? That's the next stage. Why are you pawing at me, huh? Here we go. 3 of Cups. Ooh, celebration. So maybe you hold your position, you know. By hell or high water, I will get off this merry-go-round. Swear to goodness. Celebration. That could be, especially if you're leaving, say, a long-term partnership, be it like romantic, business, or whatnot. Maybe you are exiting whatever respective partnership that is and finding, like, soul tribe, you know, whatever that looks like for you. A new friend group, just a social circle that might be more attuned to what you're actually looking for in life. Because I mean, the hero's journey, that's about massive personal change. So this might be someone who, for some reason, is just threatened by the change that you're going through, and they're just trying to stop you. Maybe they've never expressed any sort of romantic feelings or affectionate feelings or anything like that before, and now all of a sudden that you're moving on or trying to move on, Wheel of Fortune in reverse, and we also got the Nine of Spears here. But now that you're trying to move on to the next stage, acquire the reward and atonement and the elixir and all those things, they're trying to stop your wheel from turning because maybe your hero's journey goes to a place they can't come because they're not doing their personal work to put them into whatever, like, emotional maturity or whatnot to be able to proceed with you. Because, I mean, if you're trying to really plant new seeds in your life and have those take root, you truly have to consider your soil, Not everything that you could potentially put in that soil is good for that seed, Meaning, not everybody can come with you as you move on, as you change. And some people have a harder time with accepting that than others. That growth happens, change happens. That's life, The idea of just your life staying the same and like at one point in my life, I had this vision of like get the secure 9 to 5 and then I'll work there for 30 years and retire and then do whatever. Now that I have been shooken out of that stupor by just a brutal, like 5-year-long individuation process, it sounds like literal hell to me. Like the things that I was going for before, now that I've gone through that experience of real self-examination, and I think this is like what I guess would be referred to as a midlife crisis in other terms. I think of it as individuation, but now that I've gone through that, just looking at what I was going for before, like that's never going to make me happy. It serves its purpose, yeah, but it's just not the way my heart and my mind work, And some people might take real issue with how you're living your life and not pay any of your bills. So, take that for what you will. And if I might add too, you don't really need to take advice, or, you don't really need to take criticism from people you wouldn't take advice from. But we've got flirtation. And I randomly flipped this coin over to no today. I usually have it on yes. So I'm inclined to say no. And Venus in Sagittarius. So maybe this Knight of Cups is so out of left field that's just an immediate, no. Like, why are you doing this? There's no precedent for this, even a little bit. Like, not trying to be mean or anything, but read the room. Consider if this is a wanted advance. Riches. Oh, I don't like this. Saturn in Capricorn. That is giving me, like, I don't mean literally they're gonna try to buy you, but you know what I mean? Like, diamonds are a girl's best friend and all that. I'm not a fan, but. Oh, and another 10. Progression from 9 to 10. But yeah, I'm getting, like, ugh, just the egotistical, like, how can you not be impressed by my spoils and my riches and my hoard of gold that I like to lay upon like a dragon? I don't know. Could it be you having the personality of a wet sock? Maybe. Maybe that's the problem. Go figure. Yeah, I guess I'm just one of those people that, like, if you can't impress me for under $20, this ain't gonna work. You know, I like coffee dates and lunch and whatnot for the first date because I'm trying to catch the vibe to see, like, can you have a conversation like a human or no? And that's a really good, like, in the cold light of day, to observe what that person is really like without being, fogged up by, whatever your vice of choice might be, or even just being tired at the end of the day. Because I mentioned midlife crisis because I'm by the life expectancy, I think, what it is right about now. Yeah, I'm middle aged. Just about. I thought it was going to happen later. Why is it happening earlier? Why is it speeding up? But money is not a replacement for a personality, you know? And of course, ooh, this came out sideways. Like, you can't subsist on fresh air, you know? I've been in the relationship where I'm footing the bill for everything, and it's exhausting, to be the only one contributing to the finances, and then, like, you come home and they haven't cleaned up, they haven't put in any job applications or anything. Like, okay, so what are you doing? Like, you're just letting me suffer, really, is what's happening. But another Mars card. Mars in Cancer. Coral. And it was on its side. So maybe this hasn't happened yet? Or it is up in the air what the reaction is gonna be. Maybe we haven't crossed that bridge yet. Maybe this, whatever false affection is, hasn't come in. And what is worth your time? Like, you can get your feelings validated by your friends, by a therapist, by family, by whatever your support system is. You don't have to duke it out with somebody who's shown themselves to be, unreliable, to be okay with you suffering. You don't even have to reply, Because in this day and age, they're probably not actually showing up on a horse. It's going to be like a text or something. You know? Leave them on unread if they're not blocked. You know, there's a bunch of different options for reducing or preventing communication. And I mean, if you have kids or something, you know, you probably can't restrict their communication with you, at least not while you have the kids or something. But you don't have to reply. Like, they can be as mad as they want about it. Like, they know how they've been acting. They know they've put you through an ordeal. And they probably very well know they intend to put you through more. And they're just doing it anyway. I don't know, because they're incapable of change. They might be unwilling to change, which inadvertently makes them incapable. But we'll get one of these here. There's a Midnight Oracle. So, even though you may very well have valid reasons to just, like, lay into this person, for your own peace of mind, it might be more prudent just to leave them on unread. Yeah, get in. And, you know, there are many moments in my life where it would have been so gratifying to just rip into somebody. But it's not, like, I don't want to pretend like I'm noble or something like that. I'm trying to reduce the load on my own nervous system for my own good. It's not because, you know, they deserve the turn the other cheek treatment, because I'm not a pacifist. You know, if you cross the line, it needs to be addressed, but if they're not banging down your door, if they're not trying to randomly meet up with you, you know, that'd be getting a little stalky, you know, but they're not trying to bump into you where they know you frequent or something, and it's just a text message, your nervous system will thank you for just ignoring it. Just saying. Requiem of Roses. Ooh, look at that. That's cool. Where's the book? This is, I think, one of the only oracle decks that I've seen that has reverse meanings. Like, it's intended for that. Requiem of Roses. Reversed. Regret, stagnation, or clinging to the past. It warns against being trapped in nostalgia or resisting growth after loss. Reflection. What do you hold onto from the past, and how can you honor it while continuing to grow? Where can you find beauty in endings? And I just got a thought that popped up. Graveyard magic? Because this is in reverse. A graveyard rose. That took a pretty dark turn. I'd say if that's for you, you probably already know about it. But I think this leans into the theme of just leaving the past behind, getting out of this cycle, letting it end. And it might hurt. As much as you might want to leave this person behind, get on from the ordeal onto the reward, it might feel bad, and that's okay. It's okay to have those heavy feelings. Sit with them, hold space with them, for them. Listen to sappy music if you have a hard time accessing tears, if you're like me that way. You know, Florence and the Machine just put out a new album, that Perfume and Milk. That did get to me a little bit. She's got such a cool voice. So, that heaviness is going to be with you going through big change, especially big change like the hero's journey. But again, that's okay. I think there's a lot of toxic positivity in the world that teaches us to run away as soon as we feel negative feelings, and they're such an important part of that full human experience, the full emotions. But so we've got read and nap for an activity. Love it. And Lay Disco by Shiny Toy Weapons. I don't want to get dinged on the content, whatnot. That was, I love that album. I remember I think it's like a tree on the album cover. Very interesting music video, too. And, you know, if you are in a reading slump, you know, just talking about the new Florence and the Machine album, that Perfume and Milk, talks about, like, being distracted while trying to read. I find smut helpful. If you're struggling to get back into the rhythm, you know, something that really captures your attention. So take that for what you will. But overall, I hope this helps. I hope this resonates, and if it doesn't, I hope the next one does. Thank you so much.